Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. Today's session is going to cover how to research common law marriage in Utah. Basically, looking for secondary sources, statutes, cases, and how we can branch from each of those different content types and also stay organized as we prepare to write an open memo assignment. Now, there is something I want to do first, and that is at the top of the screen, I'm going to click on folders. And I'm going to open up all of my folders. This will be the first one I'm going to make this semester. And I will click new folder, the little icon with the folder and the plus sign. And I will call this Utah Common Law Marriage. All of the information, all of the documents, cases, statutes, maybe articles that I think are going to be important, I'm going to drop into this folder throughout the class. The next thing I want to do is click where it says My Links. And I will click View All Favorites. So throughout the class, I'm going to access some databases and keep those handy in case I ever want to go back to those. And I will click where it says Add a Group, and I will also call this Utah Common Law Marriage. Now just remember, folders save what I call pieces of paper, cases, statutes that I want to go back and read again. Favorites saves places on Westlaw, databases that I want to access over and over again. So throughout the class, I'm going to drop some documents into my folders, and throughout the class, I'm going to drop some locations into my favorites, and I'll show you how to use those in just a moment. All right, so I'm going to go back to the home page. And I just want to remind you that you can always start with a search right here on the home page. You can just type in your search. So I'm going to do common law marriage. And over on the right side, I will select the state of Utah. If you don't need federal information, if it's not binding in any way, if it's just persuasive, go ahead and just run a state law search first. And if you decide you want to get federal information because maybe you feel like you need it, if it's helpful in any way, then go ahead and add federal back. But if you don't need it, don't include it. I always say sort of research the path of least resistance. Go to where you think your answers are. And if I know I just need state cases, that's all I want to search in. I don't want to search in federal information at this time. So here we have our cases. There are 238. You'll see where your search terms appear highlighted in yellow and in bold. And just for the purposes of this class, I'm going to pretend that I've looked through some of these, and I'm going to select the first 20. I'll tag those at the top, and I'm going to drop those into my folder. Obviously, you would need to look at these and at least take a little bit of a gander at them before you start dropping them into folders. But I know that a couple of these are pretty helpful for you. We're going to come back and use White v. Blair later on in the class. So I'm just looking through. Again, you can kind of look through the highlighted text and the bold text to see if any of these are helpful for you, and you can come back. I'm going to click where it says content types. And something that I want to point out when you do a search from the home page, it is searching in the jurisdiction primary law that I selected, but it is also searching in all the rest of Westlaw as well. So it's an easy search to do, and it looks like we got really good results. But I don't need all of this information for this assignment. And so I did want to highlight that in the sense of you're going to always get a lot of information when you do a global search from the homepage. So this class, I really want to focus on encouraging you to learn what content you have available to you, and to always consider to narrowing your search by a specific database. Again, you could start right here on the homepage, but if you don't need all this information, don't always include it. So the first place I want to click into is state materials, and I will click on Utah. The first place I want us to go to are secondary sources. Now, your first thought might be, why am I going to go to secondary sources, Anna? I need some cases. Well, I like secondary sources because if I don't know a lot about a subject, I want to read something already written by someone else who might be an expert, either in that field or in that jurisdiction. So I can see that there are 12 databases for the state of Utah, including some law reviews and journals, some practice materials, some kind of law letters, some pamphlet type information. But one that sticks out to me is the Utah Family Law, Utah Practice Series. We also have the Journal of Law and Family Studies. That might be helpful. Maybe the Utah Bar Journal. That might be pretty generic, so I could look in there. But I'm going to go ahead and click into Utah Family Law, Utah Practice Series. Now, the first thing that I want to do, because this is my jurisdiction and in the field that I'm researching, I'm going to add that to my favorites by clicking where it says Add to Favorites. And so now I've saved this location. I'll have easy access to it at the top. And there are a couple of ways that I could search. I could just start typing common law marriage, which will get me some results, but I'm always wanting to encourage you to try different things. So the next way to search is by opening up the entire database as if it was in front of you and you were looking at it, reading it. So here I can see all of these sections, and I can see that Title 81 is dealing with the Utah Domestic Relations Code, and I can begin opening up that title. And then I can see Chapter 2 is about marriage. I might also need to take a look at rights and obligations during marriage, maybe the dissolution of marriage. I'm not sure yet. But this is a really good example of why I like looking through a database, because again, if I don't know a lot about this topic, I can just start opening up all of the chapters and parts and sections and so on to see what it is I might need and find out where I'm going to be. So here we have Part 4, the validity of marriage, and I can see 81-2-408. Validity of marriage not solemnized or solemnized before an unauthorized individual. And so here I can open up that section and I can save this into my folder. Maybe this is a good article. And I can save that into my folder to make sure that I don't forget it. Now, one of the reasons that I do like looking at a secondary source is that it's going to lay out things for me. Oftentimes it may lay out the 2-prong test or the 4-prong test or the elements to prove something. So here we have a marriage that is not solemnized according to this chapter, A, B, C, D, E, and then 2, 3, and so on. And so now I know what I need my cases to do for me. Now I need to go and find cases that answer these elements of what validity of marriage not solemnized or solemnized before an unauthorized individual would be. But most importantly, it may lead me to primary law. Here we have something from the Utah Code, some case law that might be helpful. And so this is just really one example of how you can get a lot of information from just one article in one database on Westlaw. And so I really love this in the sense of I maybe didn't know a lot about this subject, but now I have, one article, it's about 21 pages long. Again, the footnotes at each of the sections, might help me. Standard of proof, common law marriage, Utah Code, Hansen v. Hansen. And I can kind of keep going through seeing all of these headers and look at my hypothetical to see if any of these sections are related to what it is that is in, the facts of my open memo assignment. And so that's why I love looking at a secondary source. Secondary sources may also lead me to West Topic and KeyNumbers. We'll talk about those when we get to cases. It may also lead me to other articles. So here we have some sections in the American Law Reports, which is one of my favorite databases, as well as the Legal Encyclopedia, Corpus Juris Secundum, some other, treatises and practice aids. Obviously, if you're dealing with alimony, child support, some of these might be helpful, but I just wanted to highlight that one article can really lead you to a lot of different things and open doors into places that maybe you weren't aware of. All right, I'm going to go back out to the homepage. And I did want to also highlight additional secondary sources. Now, we were pretty lucky that when we clicked into Utah secondary sources, that there was the Utah family law practice. But if I click on content types and then go to secondary sources, I did want to highlight that you can also search by a particular content type, such as the American Law Reports. I can see that there's a specific volume on family law. So I don't have to search in all of the ALR. I can go into a specific volume. Maybe now I want to type in common law marriage. I'm not searching in all of ALR, just the family law volumes. And I got 1,262 articles. So here we go, validity of common law marriage in American jurisdictions. Click into that article. Let's see how long this one is, but I want to show you something. It's 248 pages. It's a pretty long article. I'm going to drop that into my folder. But I did want to highlight something that I love about ALR articles is that usually at the top of the article, and again, just depending on the topic and the article itself, it may have an article outline. This one is pretty short, but again, I can jump to section 3, view that the marriage is invalid, or if it's valid. But what I love is that it will also give me oftentimes a table of cases, laws, and rules broken down by jurisdiction. So here I can see all of the circuit courts and then following the state courts that it cites to within the article. So I can scroll down to see if it cites to any Utah cases in this article that might be helpful for me. And so here we have Utah, we have adoption of KTB, Johnson v. Johnson, Kelly v. Kelly, White v. Blair. There's my White v. Blair again. I did want to also reference that when you are looking at your case law lists and your secondary sources and looking at footnotes and tables of cases, always consider, again, going slow, jotting things down. But if there is something that you see that you keep seeing over and over again, wow, this was in, an ALR article, this was in this Utah practice article, it was in the notes of decisions of my statute, I would always consider taking a look at that case. I've now seen White v. Blair, I think 3 times. I saw it in my original list. I saw it in Utah practice. I'm now seeing it in the ALR article. So this might be a case that I would want to take a peek at because it keeps appearing over and over again. I'm going to click back into the family law volume and save that into my favorites. I'm going to go back to secondary sources. And then the final place that I want to show you is going into a topical secondary source database. So here is the topic of family law. So let's say maybe you didn't find something really good in ALR, AmJur, CJS. Maybe you looked in Utah and there wasn't really anything. You could also look in topical secondary sources. Again, just taking a little bit of time going through. Here we have 194. That's about 8 clicks here on the screen. So even just taking 5 or 10 minutes, not even that much time, to go through all of this and seeing what databases are out there and learning about the content that we have on Westlaw. So again, I could just take a little bit of time and look through these: family advocate, community property, estate planning. Again, not sure exactly what your entire, open memo is all about, but I could just kind of keep going through these to see if there might be anything else under family law specific that might be helpful. And again, just another avenue to go into learning more about what you have access to. Maybe you're interested in family law and you just want to see the information here. So here we have legal rights of children, divorce, marital litigation in South Carolina, marital property law, marriage and divorce. Maybe, some of these databases might be helpful that are, somewhat generic in title. They're not geared to a specific jurisdiction. So again, just take a little bit of time and go through the list to see if there might be anything that would be useful. And teach yourself a couple of new databases each time you're working on a project. So again, a practice guide to family law, that might be a great one. I'll hop into that. And I'm going to add that to my favorites for now, but I'm not going to run a search. I'll just keep that handy in case maybe I want to go back to that. All right, I'm going to go back to the home page and I'm going to click into statutes and court rules. Again, just another avenue, another entry point into finding content. I could have found all of this under state materials in Utah, but again, just a different way to access the Utah statutes. So I clicked on content, then statutes, and then Utah statutes. Just a couple of options here that I wanted to highlight. Just like we did in the Utah practice, the family law volume, I could start opening the Utah statutes by title. Here we have husband and wife. I can kind of keep going through to see if there might be anything here that is also useful. I could also use over on the right side the index to the Utah statutes. I love an index. It is universal across all jurisdictions. So the US Code Annotated, as well as every state, has its own index. So maybe I want to go to C for common law. That might just be my initial thought. Maybe that's how I think it might be found. I don't know yet. And I can go through the alphabetical list. And if I go to commercial, here we have common law marriage. It might open up and tell me I might need to go to another section, or here it is, right in front of me, common law marriage generally. Again, and I could have also run a search in the Utah statutes annotated. I could have just typed in common law marriage. But now you have 3 different ways that you know to search: by a search, by the table of contents, and then by using the index. So again, just build your skills and try different avenues of finding things. I'm going to go ahead and click into this statute. I will drop this into my folder and save that. So there are a couple of clicks here that I want to highlight. And I can see that this was formerly section 30-1-4.5, but it's been renumbered here to 81-2-408. I'm making a note of that because in our Utah practice article, it still references 30-1-4.5, but if I clicked on that link, it would take me here to the renumbered version. So I did want to highlight that notation. So if you were looking at that article and you jotted that citation down, it should take you here because it will take you to the most current version. So here we have our statute, and I can go through it and see any of the notes of decisions, which are located right here at the top. These are a list of cases that the West editors have read and have said, Anna, if you were researching 81-2-408, these are some really good cases, and this is how they've discussed them. And so they've broken it down by topics in the notes of decision. So I can go through if there are any constitutional issues, what's the purpose of the statute, effect of an invalid marriage, and I can see any cases that have discussed this statute in that way. I also see topic and key numbers here that might be applicable. Here we have elements of unsolemnized marriage that might be useful, mutual consent. Again, I can go through all the topics to see if there are any that are related to my research. So again, just go to statutes, Utah, and do your index search, a search term search, or go through the table of contents. I clicked into notes of decisions. And then the other click that you can do here, oh, and there's White v. Blair again, so kind of keeps popping up. It's definitely a case that, now has piqued my interest. I might need to come back to this case and take a look at this and see why does it keep coming up. The other click that I wanted to highlight is KeyCite citing references on your statutes. So KeyCite citing references will be anything that has cited to this section. And so this will not only include cases, but it might include regulations, administrative decisions, secondary sources, as well as other court documents. So this is a great way to start expanding your resources. I can see that there are, 54 cases in addition to the ones in the notes of decisions that have cited to this section in the Utah code. Maybe I want to, tag the first 20, drop those in my folder, and save those for future use. One thing I did want to note is we all think differently. So if you were a person and you wanted to start with the statute, that is great as well. I think starting with a statute is always a plus. And each content type will lead me to the other. So as we saw with the secondary source, it led me to cases, it led me to statutes. And now that I'm in a statute, it has led me to cases and it has led me to secondary sources. So here I have information from marital property law, the Utah practice. I'm not sure what those are. We have some surveys on common law marriage, the West ALR Digest, causes of action. That's a great treatise, maybe something dealing with immigration information. So again, this is just another avenue to expand your resources, find additional information to try to help you understand common law marriage in the state of Utah. So just other avenues to get information. If something looks helpful, take a click into it and see what it has to say. Here we have Amjur proof of facts, validity of marriage. I love Amjur, just another great encyclopedia, kind of like ALR. And again, it looks very similar. It will have an article outline at the top. It'll have an index of facts or issues or kind of little tidbits of information. And then following that is usually also a list of either cases, or it might take you right into the article itself, and then it will lead you to documents that it has cited to make these claims. So again, just another great, way to expand. I'm going to folder this. And I will go back out to Westlaw Precision. I'm going to go back to Utah statutes again, and I want to save Utah statutes into my favorites. Just maybe I need to come back to it. I might need to run another search again. All right, so I'm now going to go back out to Westlaw Precision, and I'm going to click back into content types and onto cases. Again, I could have gone back to state materials, Utah, and then cases, but I also like showing this screen. Cases, this is where you'll find you can search all of your cases all at once, all federal and all states. I could go into just all feds, all states, cases by court or circuit, and then cases by each state. So I'm going to go ahead and click into Utah. And one of the things that I always point out here specifically is, just as I mentioned earlier when I was selecting my jurisdiction in the global toolbar at the front page, do the same thing here. If you don't need federal information, don't include it. If you don't need state material, don't include it. Again, choose the research path of least resistance. I want that to be a positive for you. And what I mean by that again is, if you don't need material, don't include it. So it would be the same as if you were researching common law marriage. Don't search in energy information on Westlaw because you likely don't need that information. So I'm going to go ahead and click on all Utah state cases, and I will save that into my favorites. Now, one other reason that I like searching in just one database at a time, so I'm just in Utah state cases, my search can be a little bit broader. I don't feel the need to fill this search box with everything humanly possible. Again, I could filter down later, so I'm going to click on search, and I'm just in Utah state cases, and I want to see the results that I get. And so here we have 238 documents, but maybe, again, I haven't seen your whole assignment, so I'm just typing something in, and maybe I'm going to look at cases dealing with alimony. And so I don't have time to read 238 cases. I just want to see the ones that specifically talk about alimony issues, or maybe perhaps child support or something else. And so my original search terms appear highlighted in yellow and in bold. And now my new search term, alimony, appears highlighted in purple. And I went from over 200 cases now down to 69, which is definitely much more manageable. I can scroll through the results to see what I get, to see if any of these might be helpful for my research. But what I also like about it is, if I probably would have gotten the same results if I had typed common law marriage and then alimony from the start. But what I like about this is I can now see my new secondary term that I've added to the search highlighted against the original result. And I can make the determination, was this a really important part of the case? Was this a critical issue? So I do like that. I can see that it appears several times throughout the snippets in the document. I can look at the synopsis of the cases to see what it's about, as well as some of the headnotes within the case. So I do like starting in just one singular database, starting with a bigger concept of just my common law marriage issue, and then using search within results to narrow it down from there. And I find that that is more effective, because when you start to try to add everything at the top, you might miss something because, maybe they don't call it alimony. Maybe they call it like financial dispense to spouse, or, something like that. Or, it's not necessarily child support, but it might be, payments to children or something like that. So again, start with something broad in just one database and then narrow it up by using search within results. I want to go ahead and click clear and go back to the original results. And I want to go ahead and click into White v. Blair. I'm going to save this into my folder in case I haven't already. Might tell me I've already saved it. If I did, yep, I already saved it from another search result. But I wanted to show you a couple of tabs here on the top of your cases that are really helpful to expanding your research. So let's say that I do love White v. Blair and I want to find more cases like this. The first click you can make is on Table of Authorities at the top. The Table of Authorities is the list of cases that were cited by the White v. Blair Court. And so this is the list of 15 cases that were cited by the court. And so these might be helpful to my research. I can see on what page in the case this case is cited and how much White v. Blair talked about this case in the opinion. 4 bars, at least a page or more of discussion. 3 bars, at least a few paragraphs, less than a page. 2 bars, a few sentences, less than a paragraph. And 1 bar, a brief mention in passing. So that is one click that you can do. So if I like White v. Blair, I might want to go and see these cases. Why did the court rely upon them? The next click that you can make is on KeyCite citing references. KeyCite citing references is the list of cases that and documents that have since cited to White v. Blair. So this is what has happened since this decision came out. I can see that there are 23 cases, 32 secondary sources, and 32 different court documents. So this is a great way to expand and find additional cases. If you didn't have enough already, I can, tag a few of these here. I might already have them. I can also see if they have quoted White v. Blair, how much they've talked about White v. Blair, and then what headnotes they have in common, what points of law, and I'll show you that when we get back to the document. This is also a great place to look for secondary sources. If you really like a case, look to see what secondary sources have cited to it, because this is a great way to see a possible discussion of the issues that were discussed in this particular case. So here I can see that we have articles dealing with common law marriage, recognition and treatment, if they're in a foreign state, validation of statutes, and so on. So that is just another way to expand your research. The next way is with KeyCite cited with. And so remember, the table of authorities is what happened before White v. Blair, or the case that you're looking at. Citing references is what's happened since. So table of authorities, what White v. Blair has cited to. Citing references, things that have cited to White v. Blair. But oftentimes there might be a document that White v. Blair is often cited with for a legal proposition, but these documents don't cite to one another, but they're cited by another case. So I can see that State v. Green has cited State v. Green and White v. Blair have been cited to together by 2 other cases, Clark v. Clark, Kelly v. Kelly, and so on. So I can see these cases that have cited to both White v. Blair and Kelly versus Kelly and see why. But also, why have they cited together? And that might be helpful, but White v. Blair and Kelly v. Kelly don't cite to one another. So I love that. I kind of call KeyCite cited with kind of like cousin cases, that they're related in some way, but not totally related. They have, maybe an aunt and uncle in common, but, they're not brother and sister. They're kind of cousins. So I like that concept. All right, I'm going to go back to the document. Don't forget, at the top of your cases, you have what's called the synopsis, which is a quick summary of the case, including the facts, the procedural history, and the holding. Following the synopsis are what's called the West headnotes, which are written by the West editors. And in this case, this is where you might oftentimes find citations to statutes. So we saw in KeyCite citing references, cited with and table of authorities, cases, and in citing references, secondary sources. And oftentimes a headnote will cite to your statute. So here's that 34A-1 and that 30-1.45, but I think they've been renumbered. So there you go. So it's telling us it's been renumbered. So if I wanted to go into those, it's giving us the new links. And so you can cite to the synopsis or the headnotes. These are not official parts of the reporter. But if I wanted to see that portion where it's discussing that particular issue, I could click on the headnote number and jump to that part of the opinion. I can add a note to this. Why do I like it? Common law marriage, good cause, and save that note, and it will automatically save into my folder because I've already saved White v. Blair. I can also do a highlight without taking a note. If I know everything in purple is going to be definitions or rules or holdings, I can do that as well. And again, your password is your password, and you can stay organized, annotate however much you want. But there is one last way that I want you to use this case. I'm going to go back to the head note. So let's say I am looking at head note number 1 and I am thinking to myself, okay, I got White v. Blair. I might need some more stuff. I looked at KeyCite. I've looked at the statutes, the notes of decisions, and I still don't feel like I have enough. Maybe I need some more information. Or perhaps maybe I started with a case and I want to expand even deeper into this particular issue. Over to the right side of your head notes are the West topic and key number system. So the West topic and key number system is a universal classification of the law. And so West editors break down all the issues in your case and are essentially telling you that this case is about marriage and cohabitation all the way down into common law marriage in general. So if I'm looking at head note number 1 and I want to find all the cases in Utah that also have this same particular issue discussed, all I need to do is click on the topic and key number 253, key number 213, and run that search. It's going to run a search in the jurisdiction of the case that I'm in, so Utah State and Federal, and it will give me any instance where that topic and key number appears in any case or in any head note. And so I can see that it appears in quite a few head notes in several cases. But here's the power of the topic and key number system. So I've been researching in Utah, and let's just say my professor or the attorney I'm working for has decided that they're changing the jurisdiction and they want me to look in, let's say, Texas, Tennessee, and California. And they want me to find all of the cases with topic number 253, key number 213. So all I need to do is click on change jurisdiction, tag the jurisdictions that I want to see if there's any out there. There might not be, not sure, haven't done my research yet. But now, just by doing that, I can easily see that there are 124 instances in California, Tennessee, and Texas where that topic and key number appears. 93 in Texas, 15 in Tennessee, and 16 in California. And that is really the power of the topic and key number system. A lot of times I will hear from students, well, I found a case, but it's not in my jurisdiction, so I can't use it. I always say there's a way to use it. Look at the table of authorities, look at KeyCite cited with or cited references, but also look at those topic and key numbers. Click on the one that is to your issue, and then click on change to your jurisdiction. And boom, here I have potential leads on 124 either cases or instances in which this topic and key number appears. All right, so I'm going to end the class with the way that I somewhat began. So the first click that I want to highlight to end is history. Your history is everything that you have been doing on your password since you've received it for the past year. So I did want to show you that it's everything that I've been doing today, just looking with, Utah's common law marriage. And then I can also see a graphical view of this information. If you're trying to create a research path, you can see what I clicked into from which direction. I can kind of see that I clicked into that document. I didn't click into any of those cases yet, but I can see everything that I went into. So from this document, I had 4 clicks, a couple of clicks here, and so on. And so your history does stay on your password for 1 full year. I'm going to click into my folders and click into my Utah Common Law Marriage folder. So here is everything that I dropped into the folder as I've been researching. And one of the things that I really wanted to point out was this pop-up, and it is new recommendations are available from folder analysis. And so what this is Westlaw has been doing some additional work for me while I've been researching for the past 30 minutes or so and making suggestions. So there are 10 recommendations that Westlaw has made for me, some secondary sources, as well as another case. And so Westlaw is saying, based on what you already have in your folder, these are some additional documents that you might find useful. Now, we're not saying that these are the best or better documents. We're just saying, hey, just based on what you already have, we found these as well. And another thing that I hear a lot is, well, why didn't Westlaw find these when I was doing my research to begin with? And the answer is you may have already actually have seen Gardner v. Toffer. I'm not, maybe you've already looked at it, but you just don't have it in your folder. What I like about this is I can take a second glance at Gardner and see, why is Westlaw making this suggestion? I didn't think it was helpful, but maybe it is. Maybe I need to just take one more look at it and decide that I don't, really, really need it. So I do love using the folders for that, in the sense of just kind of ending my research, doing a little bit of follow-up, again, maybe expanding my research and seeing what might be out there. And again, I can look through all of these and keep these. I can deliver them, email them, print them off, download them, save them to my desktop, and have them for easy access. All right, so that is your session on Utah common law marriage. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out at any time, and best of luck the rest of this semester.